North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein has unveiled a new settlement with Duke Energy, other state officials, and the Sierra Club that deals with the future of payments dealing with coal ash cleanup in North Carolina. Joining us to talk a little bit about the settlement and what it means for you and for me is Dr. Donald Vaart, who is a senior fellow at the Locke Foundation and also was intimately involved with these issues as the former secretary of the Department of Environmental Quality. You've had a chance to look at some of the details that have been unveiled by the Attorney General. What do you think?
Well, I've seen the announcements, and it strikes me, this Attorney General we have seems to much rather jump into a settlement than he does in actually adjudicating anything. I mean, he's penned numerous settlements, many of which, who knows if they're a good deal, because they haven't actually withstood the cases at hand, haven't withstood the rigors of adjudication. It would worry me if Duke readily signs it. Duke doesn't do anything that's adverse to its shareholders or the law. They're very careful, and I don't see them signing on anything that puts them at a disadvantage. So, and remember, this settlement is only for the first tranche of cleanups, the cleanups that were associated with the Coal Ash Management Act as amended in, 2015, 2016. The cost, so in other words, in round numbers, the costs associated with those cleanups that were dictated by the legislature were roughly $4 billion, and this is roughly 25% of that is now going to be borne by the shareholder. I don't think there's anything wrong with shareholders sharing in the costs, since the argument is made that they benefited from the low-cost disposal over the years. That's really a question of the Utilities Commission, and if there's a dispute, it should be hammered out in court. But for whatever reason, they settled, and that leaves a slightly larger cut that was settled again by the state, this time December 2019, where the remaining some 65% of the coal ash will be dug up according to a settlement signed by Duke and by the Department of Environmental Quality. But in that case, the Department of Environmental Quality explicitly signed on to provisions, and so did the environmental special interest groups, explicitly signed on to provisions that both said that the excavation as carried out under their settlement was reasonable, prudent, and in the public interest, and they agreed to not challenge that. So what they're saying is that those costs should be borne by the ratepayer. So that's another $4.5 billion in round numbers. So overall, we're talking 8.5, 9 billion, and of that, about $1 billion is now going to be borne by the shareholder. So I wouldn't be popping any champagne just yet.
Yeah, this has been touted as $1 billion in savings for the customers. Is that the right way to look at it, or could this have been a much better result for customers had this gone through the normal process?
No, I mean, arguably, and I'm not a utility regulatory expert by any means, but arguably the shareholder should have paid some fraction. It could have been half. If it were half, then this isn't $1 billion savings; it's $1 billion cost, additional cost over what the ratepayers should have paid. So I have no way of I am quite comfortable knowing that Duke did not hurt themselves signing this settlement. So whatever costs ultimately might have been adjudicated to be borne by the shareholders, it wouldn't have been less than this amount. Otherwise, I can guarantee you Duke would not have signed it. So it's not a savings. It's a cost reduction, perhaps you could look at it that way. It's a cost reduction, but there's still severe costs that are going to be left to the customer. And again, the second larger tranche of coal ash excavations, as far as I can tell, will never go to the shareholders because of the settlement explicitly agreeing to the fact that those costs, those excavations were reasonable, prudent, and in the public interest, which is it's the standard for adding those costs to the rate base.
So would it be safe to say that you would tell the people who are reading about how great a deal this is that they should not believe the spin?
Oh, it's definitely a spin. There's no question. Duke still, I did find it interesting, and I haven't read the actual settlement. They've agreed to a reduction in the profit they're making in some of their capitalized costs. What that tells you is what we all know, which is that they actually make money off of the capitalized portions of these cleanup costs, and they've agreed to shave those a little bit. Um, Again, I think everybody realizes the shareholders should have borne some of this. When Roy Cooper was Attorney General, and this is interesting, he wrote a letter to the legislature telling them that all of these costs should have been borne by the shareholder. And what we're seeing now is some 25% might be. So under Roy Cooper's world, this was a devastating defeat. 75% of the costs that he believes should have been borne by the shareholder are in fact going to the customer. So whatever angle you look at it, I feel comfortable that yes, shareholders should have paid some. I am sure that Duke's shareholders are not paying as much as perhaps Duke thought they were going to, and that's why they signed the settlement. And there's another whole $4.5 billion worth of cleanups that apparently are going completely to the ratepayer.
Well, we know that one person who's going to be watching this very closely as it continues to move forward is Dr. Donald Vaart, who is a senior fellow at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.